that pastor was in fact out on bail. Mr. Speaker, we had the lawyers. The person has been held by police, but there are no charges that have been presented, Mr. Speaker. These are the facts. So it would be good not to anticipate debate. Wait for the report. The report is going to come here on Thursday. But to address that particular issue that we were supposed to follow procedures, Mr. Speaker, we asked the clerk of our committee. We also communicated to the clerk of the Senate. The timings, Mr. Speaker, were restrictive, but the information that was required, Mr. Speaker, in fact, the committee had said, before we can sign any report, there are some critical witnesses that must be there, including the Mackenzie himself. Mr. Speaker, we served those summonses. We asked him to come, and it will be in that report. Mr. Mackenzie, at the beginning, there was obstruction, but later on, Shimolatewa Prison, and I thank the officer who is there, made arrangements for him to be available. However, the Inspector General of Prisons, because of the security arrangements that were needed, he's a high-profile prisoner. He asked for more time. The lawyers also asked for more time, so we were not able to reach him. That's why even yesterday, the team was ready again, Mr. Speaker, to travel on their own expense and then come and make the claims later. So, Mr. Speaker, those personnel, this is how we have covered it. We did not have the clerk for the reason that at the time of going, they could not raise the funds. We did not have the clerks, but Mr. Speaker, how we have made sure that everything was captured and put on record. This is what we did. As a chairman and those members who attended, I gave a report of what we observed from the meetings of the witnesses, from how we got the invitations and everything. The members of the Senate committee who accompanied the chairman, they gave their observations. And I'm telling you, Mr. Speaker, the things that we saw at the DCI, Mr. Speaker, it's going to change the way this country thinks. And we have been placing the wrong blame on the wrong people. There are people who have messed up this country, and it is not the DCI. Mr. Speaker, I want to finish by saying that tomorrow we shall file that report. And I take responsibility for going out of my way with the support of my committee to do more. Mr. Speaker, if this committee was added more time, the one person we wanted to meet that because of logistical issues we could not meet was Mackenzie himself. However, Mr. Speaker, we have already had one extension. It's difficult for us, and we agreed we can't be given another extension, and also because of budgetary constraints. However, Mr. Speaker, what we have, especially the last witnesses and what we saw and what we have seen and the information we have collected, Kenyans, you will be proud of the work that we have done, and this Senate will stand high, Mr. Speaker, irrespective of people who have cast aspersions on this Senate committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, honorable senators, you know, order Senator Gloria. Honorable senators, there are matters that are better handled administratively, and there are matters that are better handled through plenary. This is one such matter that is better handled administratively. The point of order raised by Senator Boni basically is on procedural administrative issues. Now, this matter was brought to my attention yesterday. I have already engaged the gears of administrative officers. It's being handled. Safe to say that the integrity of parliamentary processes will always be upheld. I better leave it at that. Next order, clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Now, honorable senators, at this juncture, allow me to invoke Standing Order 45-2 and seek to rearrange the sequence of the order paper for convenience of the House. We move to prosecute Order 11. If we have the numbers, we can proceed to 12, 13, 14. If not, then after 11, we can then resume normal flow of orders as contained in today's order paper. So, clerk, proceed to call order number 11.
Order number 11, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023, second reading.
Order, honorable senators. Senator Tabitha, kindly proceed to move.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do beg to move that the Equalization Fund Amendment Bill be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, Equalization Fund is a very key fund to this Senate.
Senator Gloria and team, order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bill number 30, was published in the Kenya Gazette, number 13, on July 20th. The bill, Mr. Speaker, was first read in this House on the 19th of September. As per our SOs 145, through the Committee of Finance and Budget, Mr. Speaker, where I'm privileged to sit as the Vice Chairperson. Mr. Speaker, the Equalization Fund was established under Article 2041 of the Constitution. The reason, Mr. Speaker, it was established, it is very key to note that it was to take care of the basic services or the basic needs, ranging from the issues of water, the issues of roads, health facilities, and electricity, more specifically, Mr. Speaker, to the marginalized areas. Mr. Speaker, I did have a privilege to move the same bill earlier, and I stated that 1,424 regions are beneficiaries of this particular fund, which are situated in 34 different counties in this country. This fund is very important, Mr. Speaker, because it affiliates with our Constitution 2010 as far as devolved governance structure is concerned. And it's concerned because the promise of the devolved government was to ensure that there is equal distribution of resources in each and every part of this country. Why? Because every Kenyan pays taxes and they have a right to good roads, clean water, health services, and electricity, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, during the establishment on these particular regions, there was a keen look as far as this needs to be achieved. Mr. Speaker, the system of the centralized government after independence and before promulgation of the new constitution, perpetuated marginalization in some parts of the country, especially the far flag. And this resulted in significant levels of disparities in matters economic development among different regions. Mr. Speaker, we were privileged as a House a few weeks ago to be able to undertake what we call Senate Mashinani in one of the great counties in this country, none other than the county of Turkana. And as we were there, we were evidently able to see the levels of development from the time the devolved government kicked off, Mr. Speaker. And of course, as Senate, we were able to note a low percentage of development, especially to be much more specific on the issues of water in this county. Knowing very well, one of the key elements of this equalization fund is to ensure there is provision of water. Colleagues were able to clearly indicate whereby young children would stop and request for a basic commodity. Any funding for different counties is key in this Senate. Our major role is to ensure that counties have money. And this is a very key fund for different counties, a fund that this Senate holds very key. Mr. Speaker, one of the underpinning principles of the Constitution is the promotion of an equitable society with a comprehensive protection of the social and economic rights for all Kenyans, because we are all Kenyans. This fund ensures that there is equality and economic empowerment for different Kenyans in the different regions that they come from. To give effect to equity, Mr. Speaker, the state is required to put in place the measures that do address the disadvantaged and groups due to marginalization. Specifically, Article 204, which has established this fund to be used for basic services to marginalized areas to the extent necessary to bring the quality of services in these regions. I do want to note, Mr. Speaker, that the reason that this fund has also delayed is because, yes, we've had a court case from Wajir County due to issues of the areas that had been identified by CRA on matters marginalized. And this court case has really stopped and hindered the distribution of these funds to the different counties. When we tabled the bill, Mr. Speaker, we were able to clearly state that this fund will be distributed from the county level, but not to the CRF account. There will be special accounts that have been set in place so that these funds can be distributed to these particular bank accounts of the different counties. I want to note, Mr. Speaker, some of the challenges that have been there, which I would urge senators, especially the elected senators, the 47 senators, and more so the 34, whose counties are actually benefiting from this fund, to ensure that they play a key role in ensuring that the projects that have been identified in those regions are well executed to the completion level and are also usable to the community, because our role as senators is also oversight, so that there's an impact to the fund that has been given to these particular regions and on matters of the 4 basic needs that I had earlier mentioned. We have political issues, Mr. Speaker, whereby you realize when governors are coming in, they are coming with their own new projects all the time. Then what happens to the shells that have been built and they cannot be able to serve Kenyans? It is a high time that especially on this particular fund, the senators to ensure that the equalization fund, which is an additional, again, allocation to these counties, to ensure that the funds that have been dispersed to these particular counties are able to undertake as per the plan of the committee that has been set in place, because there's a committee on matters equalization fund. So they need to ensure that these projects kick off to completion and to avoid matters even pending bills, because the funding is available. The first time I stood here, Mr. Speaker, on the same bill, equalization fund, you realize that we had funds. The total sum for this fund started at 52 billion. But there was the earlier disbursement amounting to about 26 billion. Mr. Speaker, if I would be heard in silence by the leaders.
Bonnie and majority, you may consult, but in low tone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These are matters, money matters, funds matters. It is key to note that 10,867,400,000 on the equalization fund is the budget for this financial year, year 23, year 2024, is the amount that has been allocated. Of the proposed amount is 10,541,378,000. Now, this is the amount that will be shared to the 34 beneficiary counties based on the second policy on marginalization. The annex of the bill had been tabled and is scheduled on equalization funds allocation to the 1,424 marginalized areas identified in the 34 counties. Shillings 326 million is to be allocated on the advisory board. These monies amounting to the 326 million will be able to cater for the administration cost of the board that is in place, that is going to ensure it oversees the distribution of these funds. The bill further, Madam Speaker, provides that the allocation be transferred, as I had said earlier, to the special accounts of the beneficiaries, pursuant to Article 207(1) of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the passage of this proposed law by Parliament will provide a legal framework for the transfer of the funds from the Equalization Fund for allocations made in the financial year 2023-2024. And I had stated earlier in the first tabling that we had a deficit of 3 billion in the last disbursement, but currently in the 10 billion, and as I had earlier mentioned, there is the inclusion of the 3 billion that had earlier been omitted. Madam Speaker, I want to really appreciate and commend the stakeholders that were able to appear before our committee, especially the Council of Governors, who are able to appear and give their input, whereby you know very well the Council of Governors are playing a very key role, Madam Speaker, on ensuring that they sit, their representatives are able to sit as members of this committee in the identification of the projects. The Commission of Revenue Allocation was also a key part in this. They were able to bring in the issues of naming of the specific wards that are supposed to receive these funds, a matter that the committee had also noted and ensured that through IEBC, it's going to ensure that they get the correct names of the wards that are supposed to benefit from this particular fund, because we had issues whereby during the amendment, these are some of the issues that came about, something that as a committee will be corrected on IBC, through IBC. The International Budget Partnership Kenya was also another stakeholder, which also played a key role on how the budgeting was done. In this respect, the committee will be proposing amendments to the bill so as to ensure that the schedule reflects an appropriation of the Equalization Fund for financial year 23-24, as mentioned earlier, 10,867,400,000, as indicated in clause 3 of the bill. And it shall introduce a clause to ensure that the approved appropriations under this bill, and this one I want to emphasize to, especially the 34 senators who are benefiting from this fund, that the bill proposes that the time will not lapse. And it will not lapse until all the projects have been identified, all the projects have been approved, and all the projects have successfully been completed and are in a level of use by the specific community. So the worry that had been brought earlier in regards to the issue of that the 7-year period is almost lapsing. And as I stated earlier, this period has been shortened, or these funds could not be able to move because of the court case. But the good news is that the bill has given room to ensure that the time will not lapse on those conditions of identification, approval, and at the same time, completion. So, Mr. Speaker, I really want to urge the senators, the 34 senators who are benefiting from this fund. And this is not the end of this fund, Madam Speaker, because our proposal as a committee is to ensure that all the 47 counties do benefit from equalization fund. There are areas, there are counties that were not able to benefit out of the 47, and we have that. We have about 13 counties that have not benefited from this fund. What I want to state clearly is that this funding is a balance of what had been budgeted for the 34 counties from the onset. But as a house, our lobby, even as a committee, is to ensure equal distribution of the same, not really equal, but ensuring that it cuts across the 47 counties, being more specific on the villages, on the ward areas whereby marginalization has been identified, on the 4 specific agendas. But it is good that we carry on with the 1,424 regions, so as to set an example for any request of what will be additional. At this time, Madam Speaker, I do request that my colleague, Senator Leader Boni Alwale, to second this bill. Thank you.
Senator Khalwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to second the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill as moved by the Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. Mr. Speaker, I want to associate myself with her moving speech because it was factual and it was with direct reference to the bill. Madam Speaker, I want to spend my time very briefly by drawing the attention of the members to the schedule. Mr.
Order,
Speaker,
Senator Gerard Kay and Senator Mazayo. You are disrupting the House. Please sit down.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as colleagues will realize, the schedule indicates the counties that are beneficiary. And within those counties, there's an indication of some of the constituencies and the wards that are partaking of this particular fund. Madam Speaker, so that we do not get into a quagmire during the time of voting, as it happened earlier, some members mistook this sharing of this fund to be an entitlement for all the 47 counties and all the 290 constituencies and the 1,450 wards. Far from it, Mr. Speaker. The error, Madam Speaker, arose from the anger where upon some members seeing certain counties benefiting, they started asking themselves, why not mine? When people see Baringo, they say tick. There are high levels of poverty there. They then see Turkana, Wajir, Marsabit, Mandera, name it, people say tick. But then when counties like Bomet, Bungoma, Madam Speaker, counties like Kericho, Madam Speaker, counties like Kisumu, starting benefiting from this fund, then there's a bitter test. People say, if Kisumu can get, why not my constituency, Kakamega? If Bomet can get, why not my constituency, Vihiga? And so on and so forth. So I want to appeal to colleagues that there was a criteria that was worked on by the Commission of Revenue Allocation, which then went for pockets of poverty. To the extent that now when you see Bungoma, it is because of a unique pocket of poverty in the harsh terrain in Mount Elgon in Bungoma that then invites this award. Same argument to the rest of the constituencies. So I want to appeal to colleagues, let us vote for the bill. The CRA has painstakingly identified these pockets of poverty even in reasonably well-off counties like Kisumu, Bomet, Kericho, even Murang'a. Murang'a is here. It is because of those extreme things. I wanted to make that to be my substantive contribution and appeal to colleagues that we just came from Turkana the other day, and you realize the challenges these people from the so-called ASAL areas are faced with. This country, should we have a blunder like the one that was made in the so-called sessional paper number 10 of 1965? 65, yes. This paper, Madam Speaker, is the one that then profiled the ASAL areas as areas that were not deserving for development because their populations were not big enough. So for a period up to 2013, these ASAL areas were left behind in development. So the intention of the 2010 Constitution, as you know, you are one of the drafters of the Constitution, Madam Speaker, was that an affirmative action be applied for a period of 20 years to see if these areas could be given water, could be given electricity, Madam Speaker, the roads infrastructure could be improved so that they come reasonably nearer to the other areas. This noble spirit has been misunderstood, and people then have confused this with a fund for fighting poverty. The money for fighting poverty is domiciled in the shareable revenue, where areas with higher levels of poverty get more money. This money was over and above the poverty index. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity and appeal to my colleagues that we vote for this bill. I second.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023 be now read a second time. Senator Majority.
Just a matter of procedure, understanding 111.2. I rise on limitation of debate, Madam Speaker, because this is a very important bill, which I believe many colleagues will wish to speak to. So we can agree on maybe, I think 10, 5.